News Live.
Hello and welcome to Your Career. Ahead on the program today, we find out how to foster innovation in the workplace, and we'll speak to one of the pioneers of the Australian olive oil industry. But first, yoga, meditation and spirituality are well on their way to being mainstream in Australian society. But is there any place for them in the office? Well, our next two guests think so, arguing that in our even faster moving world, mindfulness can have a positive influence on organisations and also their people, and can even make companies more competitive. Well, we welcome today performance coach very shortly, Mike Irving from Perth, who'll be joining us very soon. In the studio, though, we've got executive coach and mindful leadership expert Jo Wagstaff. Jo, great to have your company on the show today.
Thanks, Ingrid.
And we'll be joined by Mike very shortly as well. But mindful leadership, it's something we're sort of hearing more and more about these days, I guess, as technology takes over and we're living these really fast-paced lives. What does it really mean, mindful leadership?
Yeah, we are hearing a lot about it, actually. And I think there's two reasons for that. One is there's a lot of people kind of coming out of the closet, you know, big leaders that are talking about the impact of mindfulness in their businesses and as leaders in the workplace. And also there's a lot of research that's coming through that's actually giving us evidence. And in the West, we kind of like evidence as to how these things work and the benefits for us. But, you know, what is it? I think a lot of people sort of start by saying. And it's interesting, when you think about mindfulness on its own, there's a guy called Jon Kabat-Zinn who really introduced or pioneered mindfulness into the West. And he defines mindfulness as this awareness that rises in the present moment when you're being attentive on purpose. And what we're talking about in leadership here is leaders actually cultivating this desire for self-awareness, this desire for curiosity, for compassion, and actually leading from an integrous place and from a place of authenticity.
Do you think we need this now more than ever?
No question we need it now more than ever. You know, we live in this VUCA world. We hear about this really volatile, busy world that we're all in.
And it's only getting worse, isn't
and
it?
everyone's running at 100 miles an hour. You know, we see it here. We run in, we run out.
Yep. Eating lunch at your desk.
Completely.
Yep.
And so we're not mindful in any of that. In fact, the research from Harvard tells us that 47% of the time we are not present. So 47% of the time our mind is wandering. When we're sitting with clients, when we're sitting with stakeholders or staff, we're not listening to a thing.
And it's even with things like email, right? You're always refreshing your email, refreshing Facebook, refreshing whatever you've got on your screens. You don't really have time to just be mindful.
Yeah. Well, technology adds to all of that.
Yeah.
You know, we're constantly on. And what we're talking about here is taking some space. It's almost counterintuitive. It's like, let's slow down and become more aware of actually what we're doing and what we need to be doing.
There are a lot of people that kind of look at mindful leadership and say, don't buy it. I don't think it helps. I don't think it works. You know, if you hear leaders talking about it, people don't believe it. What do you say to those sort of skeptics?
Yeah, in truth, when I meet a skeptic, it's usually that they don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
So it's less, and they don't understand the level of research that now is in place with it as well. You know, there's neuroscience now that actually shows us and provides evidence on the benefits of mindfulness, both in us as individuals, but also in our, you know, well-being, but also our ability to concentrate, to be attentive, to not be distracted by what is going on around us. And I'm not sure how that could be a bad thing for the workplace and for a leader.
Right, so you can take it into the workplace, but you can also use it outside the workplace.
Unquestionably.
Talk me through sort of how you learn to become a more mindful and authentic leader, because that's probably key. What sort of behaviours do you need to focus on and change?
Yeah. Well, mindfulness is really, I think of it as a group of practices. You know, what are the things that you are doing or can practice to cultivate this level of self-awareness? We often talk about it being sort of from the inside out, so leading from the inside out. So there are things like meditation. That is just taking a short period of time each day to sit and to come into your breath, to become aware of and become present to your breath. But there are also really simple things, and I talk to my clients about this, before they walk into a meeting, stopping for just 2 deep breaths. coming back to leaving behind where the meeting they've just come from and becoming grounded and centred before they walk into the next meeting. You know, how do I need to be in this next meeting? Am I here to make decisions? Am I here to listen? But again, we're so busy running 100 miles an hour, so there's really practical ways that we can do this mindfulness.
Well, that's key, and meditation is something a lot of people bring up, but a lot of people say, you know, 20 minutes a day or whatever they recommend. Different, obviously, meditation courses recommend different things, but I don't have time for that. You know, I'm so busy at work, I don't have time, but sometimes that's when you need it the most.
Yeah, yeah. I know the feeling. You know, for me, I try to do a minimum of 20 minutes. But when I start working with a client, I just say just 2 minutes to start with, just 5 minutes to start with. And the crazy thing is, if we can't find 5 minutes in our day to just be with ourselves, to just sit quietly, then it just means we're not prioritising the right things.
So what sort of training do you give people? What does it involve? I mean, obviously, you mentioned some of it there, but just elaborate a bit.
Yep. So what I would typically do is we would start with teaching and meditation. So just teaching people to close their eyes, to ground themselves, and to bring themselves back to the breath. It's like a gym, really. You know, we go to the gym and we exercise our muscles. This is exercising our brain's ability to be attentive to what is actually going on within us and within others. There's a lot of other things that we do in the workplace. So what I talked about, that mindful pause, a mindful meeting. And so I've got clients, for example, that if they've got a meeting with 5 people, they will actually give everybody a minute or 2 minutes to talk specifically about what's coming up or what they want to say in that. So everyone actually gets an opportunity and we're able to be more mindful in that moment.
Well, and it's not just for leaders, is it? As you say there, it's for employees, employers, anyone.
Yeah. I mean, you know, we're in a workspace where 70% of our employees are feeling disengaged. Now, part of engaging is knowing, why am I disengaged? Or I am disengaged, I need to re-engage. So we're talking about this. There are health benefits that are now showing up, you know, researched around neuroscience, evidence about the health benefits of this for well-being within the culture of an organisation, but also an ability to be more attentive, to be more innovative. You know, when we're not distracted, when we're not running around 100 miles an hour, we can actually be more creative and more innovative in the work that we want to do.
Are you seeing this become more and more immersed in different workplaces? Are people starting to pick this up?
Yeah, massively. And I do think that's why it's becoming a bit of the buzzword at the moment. You know, we're seeing it in companies such as Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, SAP, BlackRock.
All the tech companies.
But increasingly moving outside of that as well.
They are known, though, for really looking after employees.
They are, because it kind of starts in Silicon Valley, this stuff, typically, and then it gets bigger and bigger. In fact, I just read an article this morning. The founder and billionaire of Salesforce has just introduced on their floors a mindfulness space. So a basket you can go and put your phones in, and you can go and just sit and just be for a couple of minutes before you go back.
Right, so is that important? You mentioned put your phones away. Is that really important, to put all technology away when you are undertaking sort of mindfulness in the workplace?
It's actually interesting that you say that, because there's some wonderful apps around.
Yeah.
There's an incredible app called Will, W-H-I-L.
Right, so you can actually use it.
And you can use an app to sort of do a guided meditation. If you don't, you know, if you're struggling to sort of sit in silence and come back to the breath, you can actually use it as a guide. But yeah, look, in general, what we're talking about is trying to do a bit of a digital detox. I don't know about you, but kind of the first thing I reach for when I get up in the morning is my phone, and I'm putting boundaries around that, where I go, actually, I don't want to do that anymore. And Sundays in our family, we do no technology on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Now, we all go into a bit of withdrawal first thing. You know, my son, 14-year-old son, wants to grab his phone again.
Sure.
But it is, you know, it's about disconnecting from everything that's going on around us and actually connecting with what's happening in front of us.
So if you're at your computer all day, is it okay, you know, can you undertake the mindfulness at your computer, at your desk? If you can't step away, if you can't, you know, go upstairs or get time out of the office, can you do it at your desk as well?
I think that's
how do you go about that?
About mindfulness. It's right here.
Can you talk us through sort of how you do that, just practically?
So for me, if I was flat out in the middle of my day, I would literally just close my eyes for a moment. I'd come into myself, and I'd take a few really deep breaths deeply down into my belly.
And it's that easy, just 3 deep breaths, and that's all you need.
And it's that easy.
A few times a day. So in terms of productivity and decision making and stress levels, can you give us some of the benefits of that?
Yeah. So what it's actually, and again, the neuroscience is actually showing us in the brain, using scans, what happens when you are meditating on a regular basis versus when you're not. And when you are meditating regularly, what actually happens is you can self-regulate your stress much better. You know, we work in an environment where we're stressed all the time. Yeah. We don't get to renew ourselves as executives. And so meditation actually enables us to, A, be aware that we might be triggered, that we might be really stressed out, take a few deep breaths, go for a mindful walk, get out in nature, take some space, come back, and that enables clearer decision making. It enables clarity around what it is that we're doing and what we're focusing on. Again, it enables that innovation that we're talking about.
Yeah, there can be nothing wrong with switching off your mind for a couple of minutes every day. Jo Wagstaff, thank you very much for joining us on the show today. Some great advice there.